Okay. This is Parashah number 36, B'ha'alotekha, when you set up. And this week the focus teaching is from chapter 9, verses 15 through 23. Last year I went into great depth in the whole first paragraph of this Parashah, showing everyone that our lights are to shine forward and at all times. The menorah was to remain lit at all times, and so are we. And we draw our light from the Shamash light, Yeshua, who is the center candle, the servant lamp. But today we're going to talk about chapter 9. This narrative describes the mindset we must internalize and hold on to as we occupy until Yeshua returns. This is in Luke 19:11 through 37. So you're seeing how the Brit Hadashah and the Old Testament are inextricably connected. You can't separate one from another. So I try to show you this throughout the teaching. We are not to assume an escapist attitude in which we quit our jobs, cease to maintain our homes, or stop seeking, asking, and knocking in an effort and desire to ascend in our relationship to Yahweh Yeshua. And I told some of you the story about a guy who actually quit his job with the county, got his kids and family up on the roof of their house before 2000, and waited all night for the chariot to come. Guess what? The next day, he was out of a job. And somehow the chariot missed his house. It never happened. We're not to do that. Yeshua says, occupy until I come. And occupy implies you live your life. You don't stock up. You don't be afraid. You don't build gazillions of houses and accumulate thousands of toys. You occupy until he comes. We are to live our lives for him. And this also means that we may have to pull up our stakes and move in obedience according to his will if and when necessary. Recall that God designated 8,500 people, 8,580 persons, to work in the tabernacle and move it when necessary. It wasn't like you just packed up a little tiny trailer and away you went. This was a big undertaking. Also recall the population of Israelites was somewhere around 1.2 to 1.5 million. Because you had to include the kids, the wives, and the fellow travelers. The cloud always covered the tent of testimony and appeared as a fire at night. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tent, the people of Israel continued their travels. And note, they continued progressive salvation. They continued their travels. They didn't stop and start. It was a continued journey. This entire narrative supports the reality that salvation is progressive and will not occur until true believers have reached the land. Those who refuse to read the Brit Hadashah, that's the refreshed, renewed covenant, or study the Old Testament, miss the complete story that describes the process of salvation from creation to the New Jerusalem. And I'm quoting here, at the order of Adonai, the people of Israel traveled. At the order of Adonai, they camped. And as long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle, they stayed in camp. Even when the cloud remained in the tabernacle for a long time, the people of Israel did what Adonai had charged them to do and did not travel. Again, this statement alludes to occupy until I come in Luke 19. Back to the Torah, sometimes the cloud was a few days over the tabernacle, according to Adonai's order. They remained in camp, and according to Adonai's order, they traveled. Sometimes the cloud was there only from evening until morning. So that when the cloud was taken up in the morning, they traveled. Or even if it continued up both day and night, when the cloud was up, they traveled. Whether it was 2 days, a month, or a year that the cloud remained over the tabernacle, staying on it, the people of Israel remained in the camp and did not travel. But as soon as it was taken up, they traveled. Then we see a summary of the narrative in verse 23. This is what God does frequently throughout the Torah, as Revelation 21 and 22 that we were talking about before, Peter. It's a summation of what God is saying. He says all of these things, and then he gives a summary of what's going on. 7 times the Torah states that the Lord alone directs and guides his people. In the Hebrew, we see the use of al-peh, Sheb al Peh, okay, according to the mouth of the Lord. Shebik Tov is the written Torah, God's Torah. Sheb al Peh is the oral Torah. This is, you see, Peh is used here too, okay? Thus God answered Moshe's intercessory request to lead Israel to the land, and that's in Exodus 33. Now, comparing the beginning of the wilderness journey to a customary wedding practice as sanctioned by God. I put that statement in there just in case you might think gay marriage is okay. It's not. Never was, never will be. It is a marriage between a man and a woman sanctioned by God. And the whole Torah follows this wedding, engagement, betrothal process. It's beautiful. All the festivals indicate a part of that process of betrothal, engagement, being wedded to in Judaism. Newlyweds would spend a year together before the husband was required to go to war. That's in Deuteronomy 24:5. Similarly, Israel remained at Sinai for nearly a year. Then the cloud lifted and Israel pulled up stakes. And finally, the journey to the land started. You see, that's a whole wedding process. What is the ketubah? What is the wedding contract for Israel, for all true believers? The Torah. Yes, the commands of God. Ramban explains the need for so many examples of long and short encampments and journeys that I find interesting and plausible. Who was Ramban? Some of you read that and go, I don't know who this guy was. Well, I wrote it out for you. Nachmanides was his name. And if you see the Hebrew here, it says Nachman ben Moshe Rebbe. That's what it says in Hebrew. Also known as Rabbi Moses ben Nachman. Okay? And he was a leading medieval Jewish scholar. He was a rabbi, Sephardic by the way. He was a philosopher, a physician, a Kabbalist, and a biblical commentator. So when I talk about Rambam and Ramban, these people lived in this period, and they were very knowledgeable. They were very scholarly. Ramban was raised and studied and lived for most of his life in Spain, Catalonia. And he explained that even if the cloud remained for a long time at a site that the people found inhospitable, they submitted to God's will. That's important because many times we're put in a place for a long time we don't want to be. It may not be a physical location, but it may be a spiritual location. Or you may be living in a wonderful physical location and have a ton of physical problems. That's inhospitable. But we remain there. We occupy. We continue to follow his direction and take his direction. So sometimes they may have wanted to rest a long time from a difficult journey, but the cloud stayed in place for only a number of days and they moved on. Sometimes they would only have overnight to rest, and then they would be forced to leave in the morning. So it is with us. Sometimes we're so inundated with physical maladies, and it's like, my God, when are you going to give me a break? And you just think you're coming to the top of the fishbowl, and pow, you're thrown back into the water. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, like Tavia says, next time pick somebody else. But God is picking us for a reason. And when we're inundated with these things, He's got you in His hand, and He's leading you up. He's bringing you up closer to Him, and He's teaching you and those around you something. There is much to be learned when our loved ones and friends go through something. It's not just about them. It's about how you respond. So God may be using them to teach you and to bring you closer. So never lose the sensitivity and understanding that there's a lot going on when something's happening to you. And if you are following God's Torah to the best of your ability, you are in His hand. He'll take care of you. On other occasions, they would march through the night and rest for a full day and night. And then, seeing the cloud remained in place and thinking they would begin to unpack, the cloud would lift. You know, that's not God being mean. It's teaching you obedience, no matter the circumstances. When you're flat on your back and all seems lost, the cloud lifts, hey, you go. You do what you got to do. Sometimes this cloud would lift unexpectedly, making it more difficult to travel than if they had only had it overnight to rest. Right in the middle of setting it up and you got to go. Well, when God says go, the cloud moves, you got to go. We got to go. Because He sees the whole picture. And he knows what's going to happen in the near future and the far future and forever. We don't know that. So when we take a side trail or God moves us and you don't want to move, move. Believe me. Because if you stay, you might get run over. Sometimes they would rest for 2 days and get the signal to march at night, which was even a more difficult situation. Whatever the situation, the people marched and rested without complaint, according to the word of God as indicated by the cloud. And we have a beautiful picture of this over here with the cloud at night in the camp. I support this explanation in light of the information in the Brit Kadashah that in turn amplifies and supports what God teaches us through Old Testament scriptures. When I tell you I support something, it's not just because I think it sounds good. It's because I've looked it up and there's enough evidence to say, hey, this seems like a plausible explanation, and it is supported by God's Torah. Yeshua uses many illustrations that teach us the importance of being ready to move should he give the command. Remember the virgins being spiritual ready? Some had their oil in their lamps. That's a spiritual lesson. Ready to go. Following God's Torah. Ready to move. And the others kind of hanging around the bus stop going, I'll run down there and get some oil when it's time to go. What happened? Bus left without them. And God did not require those who had oil in their lamps to share with those who did not. Those people had equal opportunity to ready their lamps. And that's what's happening today. We have equal opportunity to come to God and follow his commands. If you choose to wait around, you can miss the bus. A few examples include the story of Abraham. What about that? Get up and go. And he left. His kinsmen, his home, everything he was comfortable with. He wasn't even told where he was going to go. It's not like, hey, I'm going to send you out to Wildwood. Oh, no problem. That's 40 some miles away. I can go out there. Plenty of truck stops, bus stops, food. I can do fine there. Pretty straight shot out there at 44. No, he said, land I will show you. So he didn't even know where he was going. What about the command to Lot and his family to leave Sodom immediately? And he didn't. It was through God's mercy only that they grabbed his hand and pulled him away, because he was so entrenched in that lifestyle. He didn't want to leave. What happened to the wife? She looked back. We're not to look back when we leave Egypt, guys. We leave Egypt, we just keep our blinders on like a horse on a track and go forward. We don't look to the left, we don't look to the right. We don't let things of this world distract us, as attractive as they can be. Don't let it distract you from the mission. The story of Jonah. What did he do with him? Hey, you don't go, you go. You don't go my way, I'll send you in a fish, a big fish. 3 days and 3 nights. Jaws 5. God's command to Joshua to get up and cross over this Jordan, you and all the people, to the land I'm giving to them, the people of Israel. And God's calling for Jeremiah. And God's commands for Shaul and the other disciples to go from one place to another to teach the gospel of the kingdom. Believe me, when he went across the Sea of Galilee on those boats, it was not a Royal Caribbean cruise. We must remain at the ready to move wherever God guides, that we may glorify him before whomever we find ourselves at whatever locale. Believe me, you follow God's Torah in your everyday life, people are watching. They may not like you, but they'll be watching. And when all this comes back, should they be living during the tribulation, they're going to go, man, I should have taken the opportunity when so-and-so offered to invite me or offered these lessons or offered to share this with me, but I didn't. It will come back. They will see the opportunities lost in the end. We can always revert back to other parashot that describe the transience of our perceived reality, most perfectly described in the book of Ecclesiastes. When you want to find out what really counts in this world, look at the last sentence of Ecclesiastes. The last sentence. After all of that, it's nice to have fun, and it's nice to win trophies or medals or have nice things and all of this, but that should not be the object of your life. The last sentence is to follow God's Torah. That's all that's going to count in the end. That's it. Here is the final conclusion. He says, now that you have heard everything, fear God and keep His mitzvot. That's His commands. This is what being human is all about. For God will bring to judgment everything we do, including every secret, whether good or bad. That's in Ecclesiastes 12, 13 and 14. That's it. When we are judged for our rewards or lack thereof, we will have our lives before us too. Those who are going to be saved, when God decides who's going to be saved, then we will immediately be transported to heaven when we die, because He knows if we're going to be saved or not at that time. And we will return for a judgment of rewards. That is not the great white throne judgment. So we will receive crowns for what we've done, and we will be denied crowns for where we missed opportunities. So we have to be aware when God provides us opportunities and take advantage of them every day. Those who are going to hell are in a sleep state right now, and they'll be called forward to the great white throne judgment, where they'll be sent to hell in the end. Very sad. We must keep the poles in the ark and follow the cloud. Right there is a perfect illustration. Keeping the poles in the ark when the ark was built, ready to go. Our Haftarah, Zechariah 2, 14 through 4 through 7. This Haftarah contains a vision of the golden temple menorah, whose daily kindling is ordered and described at the beginning of our Parashah. Incidentally, we are to light our menorahs. That is our goal of serving Yahweh Yeshua daily. Don't let your light go out. Even if you're feeling really crappy, keep that light kindled. It's a great testimony when we feel bad to not mope and carry on like so many others. That's very easy to do, and it's understandable. When you don't feel good, you just don't feel like smiling. But if you can, what a testimony it is. I see more people who are dying who love God. Their testimony is absolutely amazing. That's when they're shining the brightest for God. But we don't have to be dying to shine bright for God. Do it in your everyday lives. This prophecy was committed to Zechariah shortly before the building of the second temple. God outlines the rewards that await Joshua and his descendants if they follow God's ways. If they follow God's ways. The greatest reward of which is the Messiah, the shoot of David. Zechariah then describes a vision of the golden seven-branch menorah. An angel interprets the meaning of this vision. This is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, descendant of King David, one of the protagonists in the building of the second temple. And he says, not by military force and not by physical strength, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. Zerubbabel's descendant, Messiah, will have no difficulty in accomplishing his task. It will be as simple as lighting a menorah. Yeshua is the light of the world, and it is our reasonable service to emulate him. And let your light so shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works. If works weren't necessary, why would it say that? Works alone will not save us. That's true. But the love of God dictates that we display good works. When you love somebody, you don't do a bunch of mean stuff. You do the works of the one who has commanded you to do certain things, like following the Torah. And as a result of that, you'll be glorifying your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16, and I even use the King James Bible Cambridge edition for that. Our Brit Kadishah, Hebrews 3:1 through 6. This information in this passage explains the parallels between Moshe and Yeshua. There are many. I didn't go into all of them here. Yeshua, like Moshe at Sinai, was God's emissary, conveying God's truth and instructions, Torah, to the people of Israel. In the Old Testament, Israel was represented by the 12 tribes. In the Brit Kadishah, the refreshed, renewed covenant, Israel represents all true believers according to the sevenfold witness found in the book of Revelation as defined by Yeshua HaMashiach himself. In this first comparison between Moshe and Yeshua, Yeshua fills the role of being a prophet like Moshe, as predicted in Deuteronomy 18. Also like Moshe, Yeshua intercedes for the people. And as such, he is filling the role of a Kohen, a priest, just as Moshe did when the people worshipped the golden calf, and in many other instances. But there are some differences too. Yeshua is not on the same level as Moshe. Okay? According to Orthodox Judaism, Moshe was the greatest prophet ever known. Period. But we know Yeshua was greater still. And Moshe says that. There will be one greater than me that will be coming. The paragon of virtue within Judaism, faithful in all God's house, but better than Moshe, just as he is better than angels and all other human beings. This is a difference in the teachings of traditional Orthodox Judaism that maintains Moshe was the greatest rabbi ever. However, even if these scriptures did not foretell of Yeshua as the greater rabbi, Yeshua deserves more honor than Moshe. Deuteronomy 15 through 22 says, "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own people. You shall heed such a prophet. This is what you requested of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly when you said, 'If I hear the voice of the Lord my God any more, or ever again see his great fire, I will die.' Then the Lord replied to me, 'They are right in what they have said. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their own people. I will put my words in the mouth of the prophet who shall speak to them everything that I command. Anyone who does not heed the words of that prophet shall speak in my name, those things that will be spoken in God's name, I myself will hold accountable." How much clearer does that have to be? It's not Paul, it's not Moshe, it's Yeshua. "But any prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, or who presumes to speak in my name a word that I have not commanded the prophet to speak, that prophet shall die." You may say to yourself, how can we recognize a word that the Lord has not spoken? If a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, but the thing does not take place or prove true, it is a word that the Lord has not spoken. How many, even messianic, so-called prophets, Monte Judah, i.e., have made multiple predictions that have not come true? He himself said if they didn't come true, he would step down from whatever pulpit he's put himself on. But he's still out there. And people still think that's really cool. Monte Judah. Well, maybe I should pick some kind of a name. Tama the Terrible. I don't know what. Yeah. I'm sure you could come up with a name for me. "The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Do not be frightened by it. Moshe was a servant. Yeshua is the son." For a more detailed explanation of the differences between a servant and a son in Galatians 4, 1-7, and Yochanan 15:15. In Hebrews 3:3, the difference is made between Moshe, who managed the house of Israel and the tabernacle, and Yeshua, who built the house and will build the temple of the Lord. "And speak unto him, saying, This speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of this place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both." Finally, in Hebrews 3:6, speaks of the oneness of Yeshua with and as God. "But Yeshua as a son over his own house, whose house are we if we hold fast to the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end." Yeshua is God, manifest in the role of a human at the time, to come and say, "Can you hear me now? Do you get it now?" We'll see one day. It will be an amazing sight when we behold him in the New Jerusalem. Shabbat Shalom.